And we will archive this. It'll be available as part of the series. So this is, I think, the seventh conversation. We've had Angel Ordonez, we had Miho Azama, who's director of the Denmark Radio Jazz Orchestra. Who else? Our good friend Dana Burgess, who's running the dance programs at Smithsonian. We had Majida as our guest, and I think she'll be here later, Majida Johnson. Let's see. All right. And, but I thought we'd start, we're going to talk about education quite a bit, and not only education in teaching students, which some of us here are doing, but also how we educate the audience and how we cultivate audience. I know that a music organization focuses on finding the audience and cultivating the audience and educating their audience. A lot of it has to do with that. You don't just line people up. So anyway, tell me, let me ask a question about how you like to start, what you like to see when a kid is starting music. Let's talk about that.
The main thing that I like to see is the interest. Hopefully, that they have a genuine interest, and even if the interest is a little passive, I try to, if they're showing up consistently, either by uh, having to do it, or they're just coming because they're curious. So I think it's up to me to to really try to find the push the buttons to find the to light the fires and to find the interest, uh, you know, for the student.
Now, do you find you're educating the parents also?
Well, actually, these days it's all educating the parents. When I first started doing the jazz academy, I would bring special guests in, and the parents would know who the special guests were.
Hmm.
These days, the parents, they don't know who the special guests are. Some do, but a lot of them, don't know who the special guests are. So yeah, you are educating the parents. And then, I would say it's 50-50. I would say it's about 50 because there are some parents that are, they know that they're not bringing them to like a saxophone teacher or whatever, or a band leader. They're bringing them to Paul Carr because they know of my work.
Right.
And then there's some people that have been referred. So yeah, of course, then of course you are educating them.
But how do you prepare the parents? In other words, if you're dealing with a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and I would say that's probably the average starting age for your kids, or are they a little older when you're
I get
seeing them?
all, yeah, I teach all kids. I teach beginners. I mean, adults. I usually get the hot shots around eighth or ninth grade that they now that they've gotten an interest in jazz. Now they want to take it to the next level. So they've been slipped my name some kind of way. And then so that is the bulk of it. But yeah, I get 9, 10 year olds as well.
So are their parents, I'm going to keep hammering on this. Um, do their parents understand what practicing is all about? Practicing, number one, whether the idea of daily practice. I mean, is there anything else that they're doing these days that requires daily practice, that has a one-on-one coaching, and that um, yeah, this kind of thing. Let's start with just the daily, the
Well,
hard work
they
that's involved.
yeah, they understand when it is some type of sporting activity that they have to get up at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning, 3 or 4 times a week when it's swimming, or if they have to do some kind of club soccer. They understand that, but a lot of times when it comes to music, some parents think of music as just being like an activity. I don't know, like it's the math team or the book club or something, something like that.
Right.
So they don't really. Usually, when I get a younger kid, these practice sheets, and so just so that and it's only just to start, because usually after a while we kind of forget about the practice sheet. But just so like you just hit them right at the beginning, which you have this this practice log. So I would like for you to do 5 times a week, especially if it's someone like 8, 9, 10 years old and they have no idea of what what's expected of them. So I'll do that a lot, and that seems to work with them and the parents, because the parents could put it up on the refrigerator or something and check it off or whatever. There's some kind of there's some kind of guy. I really didn't get into that until I should have done that a lot sooner. But when I'm dealing with the teenagers or the 12-year preteens or whatever, that's someone that's in the jazz, I don't really have to do that. But the younger ones, they need a little bit of need a little bit more of a path set out for them.
Right.
Expectation that's
Right.
written down. That's you can talk about it, but once they see it, it's a little bit different.
Well, you have to hand it to the high school marching band directors. They run those programs like a general, and they terrorize the students. And I know why, because otherwise they would never do marching band.
Right.
Um, it's for better or for worse, that's how they keep their programs going. And so,
That's exactly
yeah,
that's exactly right. And the marching band is something that the whole the school and the community sees on a regular basis. They don't see the jazz band, they don't see the orchestra, but they see the marching band sitting in the stands at the games, or at the football games, at the basketball games. The prep band, they see them.
right.
So a lot has to uh, you know, and the marching bands are social, so the kids like marching band, but yeah, it's not the most musical place to be, but it can be fun, and you can learn, and you can. That's a great teaching tool.
It can be. I mean, we could get into that, but I've seen some great high school programs, the way they develop. I remember I don't remember his name. He was a friend of mine, of the family at the time, but he ran the program at Lake Braddock, and he
Hmm.
was a clarinetist. And they had seventh grade there at the high school. They had the junior high there also, and
Right.
he would take all the seventh grade clarinet players and he would focus on them. He would have 12 clarinet players or whatever, and he would work with them every day because he wanted them to be hot stuff in 3 years, 4 years, and
Exactly. Yeah.
he was looking at who was coming in the door.
Always for a
Yeah,
band director, you're always looking, and is always the next year. It's always 2 years. You're always thinking about that. But I was
right.
just about to say, I'm from Texas, so I grew up in the whole marching band, football craze type of, and then and then after high school, I spent before I transferred up to Howard. And by the time I got to Howard, I was done with marching band. I was at Texas Southern, which is another historically black university, which is in the same conference as Grambling, Jackson State, Southern. So it was all marching band. It was so serious. We were out there till 1 in the morning,
Mm.
1 in the morning, and it was very intense,
Let's
to say the least. The whole hazing, all of that, and the football, the band and the football team. That was hardly the only thing that was different between down there between the band and the football team is the pads.
right.
Every You had hitting, you had cursing, you had long rehearsals, you had repetition, learned by repetition, not so much by theory. it was, I suggest everyone go through that at least one semester. No,
I'm
I'll
gonna
take
miss
that
that.
back.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
yeah, yeah.
take a
No,
pass.
I'll take that back. No, no one needs to go through that.
So, I had a very brief conversation on this subject with President George W. Bush right after he entered office, and we are at a tiny little party, um, and I was asking him about elementary. I said a big issue with me is elementary school, public school education, and I said, you know, I'm going to tell you one of the top uh, public school education programs in the country, maybe the best one. I don't know if you would know what that is. He said, no, I don't. I said, well, it's probably Texas. And
Hmm.
he was, of course, he was flattered and thrilled to hear that. But, you know, football plays a big role in getting those trumpet players and trombone players to.
Absolutely. And your show has to be your show, especially if your football, well, it doesn't matter if your football team is good or not. The whole community is coming out, and then the band show has to be different every week because you can't do the same show every week, if you're playing at home.
So let's come back to the present now, and I want to talk about educating. You have the Jazz Academy, and I want you to give a little bit of a discussion about that, and then I want you to talk about uh, how you're educating the parents in this program.
Well, we started in 2002, and we just celebrated 20 years. It started with the jazz with a camp. I used to
Hmm.
do 3 weeks called Jam Camp, and I basically started the Jazz Academy, the camp, because I was working with so many saxophone players that were actually, they were doing really well in their high school and junior high bands, but they couldn't. A lot of times they wouldn't make their jazz band because a traditional jazz band only had 5 saxes,
Right.
and so a lot of times they would be really ready to go, but because of seniority and all the things that you have to do to keep a band together, through high school, like you're saying, they had to wait their turn. So I wanted to create something to have for the students to play, and so they could play now. We started with a camp, and we did the camp maybe about 3 years, 4 years, I don't remember. And then it's three, and then '07 we started the orchestra. So that was a band that runs, exactly what the school. It mirrors the school year, September through May. Actually, we stop in May, and it's basically a community orchestra that focuses, that big band. Okay, but it's orchestra, so we have more saxophones, we have more trumpets than a traditional big band, so you can include more kids.
Mm.
And doing these 20 years, a lot of, just think of most of the players, the players from the Washington D.C. area that you see out playing now in New York and touring the world. If they're from this area, they came from the Jazz Academy,
Mm.
and so. And we always place a lot of kids in all state and all county bands and things like that. So it's it's been good. And the thing about educating the parent is, if the parent sees that the kid is engaged, and that they want to come, that they want to participate, they're gonna support. And a lot of these kids now, because of for some reason these days, jazz kind of attracts kids. I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings. Kind of attract kids that are very, might you might want to say, socially withdrawn a little bit, or are very, very smart. You remember back in the day, jazz had, characters. You know what I'm saying? We had a bunch of Mingus was a character, Dexter was a character. And not to say that they weren't smart, but they were social. You know what I'm saying? The music kind of grew out of a more of a social atmosphere. Now, since times has changed, jazz really speaks to younger kids that are more intellectually, have a intellectual proudness about them. So they're curious, intellectual
Let's
curiosity, but that might mirror the social, kind of withdrawn. So when they see them in the Jazz Academy, now they see them talking, and they see them running and playing with, with kids that are, like mine. They fall in line. Is what I'm saying. The parents are a quick study.
Paul, I want to talk about an important aspect of what you're doing in terms of the content, in terms of jazz itself. the focus of jazz and the raison d'être is creativity.
Right.
And you're asking kids, and as we know, some kids, the more ADHD they are, the easier creativity is for them. But if they're
Hmm.
organized and they're good students, uh, improvisation can be quite painful.
Right. Right.
And I think we need to address that when you're looking at 13, 14-year-old kids as
Right.
they move forward, and as their parents are looking at their children, their kids being creative
Right.
artists.
Hmm. So what I do, everybody has their own teaching techniques. I'm a very big, I'm like a spoon feeder. So what I do is I will give students specific things to play. Talking about, of course we're gonna do all the basic. I start with all of the masters, like you said, Duke, Count Basie. I don't start with a lot of modern stuff. That in every show, every year we're gonna play some traditional jazz, and then of course we're gonna play more modern stuff. But for as improvisation is concerned, because like you said, it can be very, very tough. It can be very, very frustrating. I give the students actually specific things to play, and then when they get comfortable with playing that, then I start to give them the latitude to to go beyond that. But it's not until they have reached a certain level of proficiency with the tools that I've that we've given them, and usually they are organic tools. They're not. It's not a lot of. I'm not a theory first teacher. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't. I think jazz. I think you have to get those organic, like time, feel. What is that? Articulation. I think we work on that and put the theory on the back burner, because some kids really take to theory and then a lot of them don't, because theory is math. So I try to work on their ear, the feel, the timing, try to get them to make the notes dance, that type of thing. And that seems to really and actually reward them and applaud them for doing that kind of stuff. And it seems to really that's how I've always done it. And then as they progress, of course we have to get a little bit more in depth with the theory and things like that. But by that time they're already swinging. They're already playing in time, and they have a good sense of rhythm and that type of thing.
They used to call that, there used to be a language, I don't know if teachers still use it, deductive and inductive. Deductive is when you give the student a dictionary and have them learn each word in the dictionary and then somehow put together a language. Inductive is when you throw them into the deep end of the pool and walk away and let them figure out how to swim. I
Hmm.
I prefer that method myself. And then I think it sounds like you would agree. You teach them the nuts and bolts after they've already been doing the nuts and bolts.
Hmm.
Um, we do have a question, which is I was going to get around to, from Elaine Rubin. What's the male female breakdown of the students? I think that's a very important question.
Hmm. Well, I tell you, it is growing. The female, in the Jazz Academy, I would say, let's say if we have if the orchestra is 35 or 40, I would say there might be seven. There might be seven females as we were. So and it's growing. The camp that we had this year, still coming back from the pandemic, we had about 40 kids in the camp, and I counted, we had 13 girls. So I mean that was really good, and which is really cool because I had two. I had an intern, a female intern, and also a female that was working, as an instructor. So it's growing, and it's great.
And Paul, isn't doesn't this start in elementary school when the instruments are handed out to some degree?
Yeah. I would say I would. since I don't, work at a elementary school, but I would say that um, it's it's growing. The female participation is growing. It now seemed like to me a few years ago it was a thing, but now it's kind of not even a thing. You know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying? There's so many great female pianists. I mean, musicians. It really doesn't matter what instrument. They all play all instruments. They all play great. At the festival this year, we had a all female saxophone summit, and it was probably the highest attended show at the festival. So
Now,
no, I
who
mean
did you bring? You
mhm.
brought in sax players in from outside?
Yeah. At the Mid Atlantic Jazz Festival, Tia
Uh-huh.
Fuller, Lakeisha Benjamin, and Sherelle Cassidy, and they all world beaters on the
They're all,
scene.
yeah, they're
Saxophone
giants.
players,
Right,
and
right.
it just totally killed. So it's like you kind of don't even, it's not even a thing. You call, it's like it's actually it's an advantage to have, in my opinion, to have a female on the bandstand with you. It's just because I think that not only that the musicianship is of no question. Of course, if they're on the bandstand, playing, they're great. But it's just that there's a visual thing with jazz too. And so, and a lot of times we're always teaching the audience. And so it's just the whole thing. It looks, it just looks great. We don't do that do that. What is that on purpose? It just happens like that. It's just basically a mirroring society.
Right. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm sure there are other things we could talk about related to education because it is so important. Oh, I also wanted to talk about uh, how you feel as an educator in a spiritual sense about your vision for yourself as an educator and your relationship with the future of music and with the future of these kids.
Um, gosh, I tell you, as I've gotten older, I have really begun to realize, the impact that the work has made on students and people when they get to be 35 years old. They come back and tell me how what it impact. I had one kid tell me he would not even be playing jazz, and this guy plays all over the world. I would not be even playing jazz if it wasn't for you. I really take that as a it's like the highest compliment, and it's almost like that you are. It's just you have the power of being able to convey the information, be a role model to to get to present the music in a certain spirit. I think that all matters. Something I take very seriously, and it actually it works because of the results and the profound effect it has had on my students over the years.
And isn't this something you want to pass on to your students also, your belief in music and um, us piano players, we all come out of we're all preachers' kids, like Hilton Felton and a lot of these other guys. So we kind of rebelled against all that, and then we had to come around to it again. So we kind of see it as we were chosen to be here to keep these flames alive, keep the lights burning, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, and I also, well, and I know Joe, who's sitting here too. Uh, I just like you to describe how you pass your vision in the most deepest sense, the profoundest sense, onto your students, or whether you just hope they catch it like a cold.
Yeah, and I guess because I am so the way that I teach, it's kind of it's slightly demanding, as you say. So I don't, there, to start, like we were talking to start, there's not much wiggle room, and then they loosen up. But loosen up as they get more confident. But I'm going to tell you, most of the students that I have most of the instructors that I have working for me at the camp and during the year, they are all the instructors are all former students. They're all professional musicians, and they're all playing. And a lot of times when I might walk in there and they're teaching a class, they're saying something that they heard me say 15, 20 years
Right.
ago. It's really kind of funny. And I also know when they say stuff that I could tell they know that I wouldn't agree with that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's the I'm passing it on. They see one way that is
Hmm.
conveyed. If the information is conveyed, the teaching style that does work. At least they do. They see that, and then of course they can augment it, or they go to other places and get other um, um, influences, and hopefully make it better. You
Right.
know.
I'm going to move on. We there were a couple of subjects we wanted to touch on, and one was audience development, and there was a second half related to the critics. But I want to start with audience development, which brings up the fact that aside from running a school, which is to me a full-time operation, maybe an overtime operation, you're running an annual jazz festival, and you have to fill seats. So maybe you could expound on developing your audience and converting your audience to your vision, and exposing artists, uh, some that are well known to you and other people in this space, but that most people don't know at all. And
Right.
you want to expose them to these great artists.
Yeah, the main thing is everyone likes to have a good time and like to have a good, a everyone loves a excuse me, everyone loves a party. Everyone has a good time. So what I try to do, since I do have to fill seats, and we don't have the funding and all of that kind of into all of that kind of stuff, is you book. I try to book artists that has a connection to the audience, that they have a following. The audience might not know who they are, but they have a following, and they have a connection to the audience. They are artists, but they also think about the audience that they're playing for. So, and also that they have a what is that, a sensibility of jazz, and not improvisational music or the derivatives of jazz. So because jazz grew out of a beat with a dance sensibility, so it has to the music has to be moving like that. Not to say every tune has to be like you want to get up and dance, but that should be an overall sensibility about the presentation. So that's one of the things that I think about when I'm looking to book a band, and to bring in artists. Like you say, some of them are very well known, some of them are not, and some that are really, really great that I would love to have, but you just can't afford them because of the ticket price. I mean,
No,
because of that.
you can't afford them because of the agent.
Yeah. Don't get me on that. Don't get me on that. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, everybody got to get their piece. But yeah, but yeah, that's the thing. So if I can get them to come out, and I had a good help for getting started and lead in, and now I want getting the festival started off the ground. So I wanted to try to keep those people, and then try to of course you have to keep moving to bring in younger people and things like that.
So you've had the school open, operating, the educational program operating for 20 years now. And how long is it? But you inherited, as I recall, the jazz festival and kind of brought it back to life. How
Right.
long have you been involved with that?
Well, this coming February will be the 14th year, and
Right.
we also, even during the pandemic, we did a version of the Mid Atlantic Jazz Festival online. So the first one was in 2010, and basically it was Ronnie Wells.
Oh, sure. How could I
Yeah,
forget?
yeah,
Yeah.
with the East Coast. She was the founder of the East Coast Jazz Festival. She passed away in '07. I think yeah, I think that was the last East Coast Jazz Festival. So basically, Susan Jenkins, who's the CEO of the Arts and Humanities, just called the meeting together and try to get people to how can we bring back the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival?
Hmm.
I mean, how can we bring back the East Coast Jazz Festival? But after a series of meetings and things, I was left holding the bag. And so I wanted to so in the end, the venue really wanted the management at the time at the Rockville Hilton. They really wanted to bring back the festival, because the festival is in the middle of the winter, and it's indoors, and it's a good time to have something going on.
Sure.
I got a lot of incentives to get started, and
Right.
so and she was pretty much the following winter. We brought it up, but I wanted to change the name because we couldn't assume the name of East Coast, because that nonprofit had already been dissolved. Ronnie dissolved that before she passed, and so it was just
Sure.
better to start with a fresh name and a
Yeah.
fresh
Let me just mention, there is a chat room here, if you'd like to pose a question. Um, but staying with the audience development, I don't know if we've thoroughly examined that. I think that's a pretty big story, and maybe dig in a little deeper on that,
Yeah.
Paul.
Well, so of course you have to get if you're going to do a festival, you want some names that people are familiar with, and then you would also like to get some artists that they're not so familiar with, but if they are there and they see them, wow, they really like them. And so over the years, I've built up a little bit of credibility in that.
Right.
So people will say, well, I didn't know about her, or I didn't know about him, but I came to see so-and-so, which their name might have been on the top of the ticket, but leading into them, boy, that band was great, and I'm going to go over there and buy their CD, and I'm going to start following them. That that kind of a thing. And a lot of times, that band is not a band or a group or an artist that you would see, in a jazz publication, or you might not see that person at another jazz festival or something like that.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier, when we were chatting before things got rolling, about the audience and the audience relationship to the critic and the critic's relationship to what you're trying to present, and that there were maybe some disconnects there. I'm being
Well,
kind. I have not been drinking.
yeah,
So
you're trying to get me in trouble. I just think a lot of time. Well, I hate to pick on any. It's hard to talk about this without bringing up certain names. But like for instance, we just had, I think, the Downbeat Critics polls just came out.
right,
And I guess maybe maybe it was a month ago or whatever. And every year you see all of these musicians are really upset because the critics did not put them on a poll or something like that, or they might have somebody high up on a poll that hadn't had a project in 10 years, or hadn't toured in 10 years, that kind of a thing. So are they, so I think that's that's one example.
now,
And
Paul, the people that, because I see that too, and I know that a lot of people that get very good ranking work very hard, with public relations to do that.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah,
does not happen by accident.
yeah. No, 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 no. Not all of them. Not all of them. There's some, of course, a lot of the poll
Hmm.
winners, you're right. They have backing, and they have really they've got projects out, but you will see a lot of other people on those polls that, have not been active, and not have been that active in quite some time. And so it's always it's always a what do you call that, a sore spot, with musicians. What I like to do is I like to do the news week, the jazz week radio poll. Are you familiar with that?
I'm
A
not.
radio chart.
I'm sure that Rusty is, but
Yeah.
I don't really
Well,
follow popularity
yeah,
contests.
but no. All it is, it's a list. It's a list of the top 50 albums that have been played over the last month, 30
Right.
days. And so an album will come out and it'll stay there for 3 months, 4 months, or whatever, stuff like that. But usually those records that stay on the charts, that's getting the most airtime and the most, what the people are playing it the most. Usually those artists, you don't see those artists. You do, but you don't see a lot of those artists on the festivals and things like that. Uh you see them other places, and they're on festivals too, but they're not the top names, quote unquote top names in jazz, but they'll put out a record that people like.
Hmm.
So and the radio announcers like it, and that's why they're spinning it, because they're getting good feedback when they play it. So I see that disconnect a lot. So
And how about uh, reviews of your performers that are in your jazz festival? Are you? What is it like? Um, I'm going to guess it's a struggle to get press, to get media, to the Washington
yeah,
Post, the New York Times,
right,
and of course
right.
these days has to be bloggers and so forth to talk about um,
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah, I would love to have. I've had, the great Lee Merner and a couple of people from Downbeat over the years to come out, but nothing to cover the festival, but nothing on a regular basis, because I just don't have the hands to nurture those type of relationships. So that's a whole nother thing where you have to, you gotta, you would have to put some effort into that. And so we're like a one, two, we're up to a 3.5 man um, department, that's running the jazz festival. So at first it was just two, me and my wife, and now we have we have 1.5 more persons, so to doing it. So we just don't have, and I still I love to play, I love to teach. So I just don't really have the hands to run that stuff down. It would be
Right.
nice if I had someone who really liked the festival enough to do that.
Yeah, it's called a publicist and a development director, and
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, that's another thing. I've paid for publicists before,
and
but
then
I
and that money just had wings that went out there.
right, right.
So
It's great. It's great when you have the resources to hire a publicist every year, because of course over the years, then some of that stuff that they're doing is gonna stick, to
yeah.
the wall. But yeah, I mean, when you're juggling nickels and dimes to begin with, and now boom, you have this publicist fee is
I'm
tough.
very familiar with it. I want to move on to a very important subject, but I can tell you I was involved with an organization that paid about $5,500 retainer per month
Yeah,
plus
of course.
for a publicist, and it worked. But then it didn't work. They did a horrible job, so they brought in another publicist. But when the publicist succeeded, then you can get a critic to come to every show
Right,
from maybe the Baltimore Sun or the Washington Post or
right.
even the New York Times. All right, well, let's move on. DC uh, has always been the source for jazz. Um, and Ellington took the band at the Cotton Club in New York was originally Washington people,
Right.
And it's you've always got these people in DC. Is I mean, my association with the scene is from the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, the one step down, seeing everybody that played.
Hmm.
So I get the feeling that things are heating up again in Washington, D.C. Over the last 6 or 7 years. And I'd like you to comment on that, why that is, and so forth.
Well, I think one reason is because there's great jazz education here, and there is good education, and then there's opportunity. So I mean, it's not as great as it was in the '90s, but it's still pretty good. We still have a lot of musicians that move here from other places to come to Washington because you can work, you can play, you can play gigs, you can play performances,
Sure.
you can play jobs, so you can play, you know. And it's nice having the military bands here because that's a source of really good, a really good players. But I would have to say that the jazz education has really it's really top notch. And PFW is great. It's just, I mean, if you're interested in jazz in this area, you just walk around and turn. It's every if you seek it. If you're looking for it, you can find it.
But
So that type of
Paul,
thing.
right now, if the bass players from Washington D.C. left New York City, they would have to shut the city down.
Yeah, exactly.
Corcoran, Holt, Amin Salim, Eric Wheeler, Ben
Hmm.
Williams. I can go on and
uh,
on.
uh, a
Carter,
young guy out of my program,
sure.
Knox Barber, uh,
Dan Papalardo.
Also out of my program, Dan
Yep.
Populato. What is oh gosh,
Chris, of course, Chris Fun. And these
Chris
guys are marching all over the world,
Tyrone
with,
Allen. Tyrone Allen, another one for my program. He's playing with Tom Harrell all over the place. Yeah.
right. Why is that? I mean, we're talking about bass players here. I don't know if we can say the same about other instruments in terms of the anchoring the New York scene,
Uh, I just think that they're just really, really prepared when they get here. And you got Pepe Gonzalez teaching. You got Pepe Gonzalez teaching here.
right?
You got Davey Yarborough over at is retired now, but he's still around. Was at Duke Ellington. It's all about the type of instruction that they're getting. Davey, a strong teacher. You know what I'm saying? Pepe Gonzalez, another strong bass teacher. If they come around me, I'm going to take them. I'm going to recommend that they go to one of those strong bass teachers, like Elliot Selper. He's in town. He came. He could go to New York tomorrow, and they could drop him out of a helicopter in New York, and he'd be booking gigs on the way down. I mean, and he decided to stay here in DC. So I just think it's the instruction and the opportunity.
But hasn't that had an influence? And then you look at Chris Fun, who's decided not to go to New York. He still goes out internationally,
Right.
but hasn't, these guys have to come back home to get their laundry done, you know? And so there
Right.
you go to Herb's jam session, and anyone can be there.
Yeah.
And it raises, all boats are rising, I think, in this city.
Yeah, I think the level is high too. The proficiency is high. Yeah, I mean, if someone can play, if they're in Washington D.C. and they can play, they can go anywhere and play and make it. I have several saxophone students that's playing in New York, trumpet players, all that are doing it in New York. You know.
Hmm. I
It's
wanted,
it's I,
can we
mhm.
get some questions? So far we've had one question the entire hour. There must be some questions. We've raised
I
a lot
thought I
of
saw a second. I thought I
issues.
saw a second question in the chat. Oh no,
Uh,
it's
it's
not. Okay.
no, it's a comment on the previous
Uh,
question.
all right.
Um, so we're focusing right now on what's going on in DC, and by the way, every time I turn around, you're performing. You're performing a lot with Marshall, um, and you guys
Yeah, that's
are a draw. You know.
yeah, yeah, that's a fun that's a fun band. We always talked about uh putting a band together because my name is Carr and his name is Keys, and we say Car Keys. We've been saying that for years. And then one day we were at the DC Jazz Festival at one of their functions, pre-functions, and we said, "Hey, let's get a gig." And after that it has been going very well. It's going on very well. The people seem to like it. And uh and I think it's the contrast. It's contrast. What they say, contrast makes the fight. So I think he and I are very similar, but we have contrasting styles, and
Sure.
I think that's what the people enjoy.
Yeah.
But we play together musically. The thing is, playing together musically and also having a show. That's that. If I could talk to younger jazz musicians, it's like, yes, you can play, but you need to have it needs to be presented in a show. You know.
Yeah. People. Yeah. That's another story. Entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
People get
Yeah, we're
flack
not
for
talking
being
about
entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about, turning flips or anything, but how about announcing your tunes?
Right.
How about arranging your tunes in a set so they have a certain flow? I'm
Well,
just
that's what Tommy Cecil says. He would like to know what the tune is in advance. He says he said this years ago. Can you just tell me what key we're gonna play in? You know.
right, right, right. Tommy Cecil is just, you don't give me, he's such an incredible musician. He's always saying that, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. Tommy, stop it. Just stop it.
That's
One of the greatest.
Yeah. We have a question here. I'm losing this on my screen. Oh, from Joe. Can you see that question? Joe
Say,
asks.
Paul, you have a young female composer in your sax section, a pianist who's doing a nice job at arranging. Can you discuss the opportunities you have been providing? So, female and a sax section composer. Gosh, there's a couple. Are you talking about Angel McCrae? Are you talking about her? And one who's doing a nice. Oh, and I would tell you I have also that is uh, Evelyn Trackman is just great. We yeah. So in the orchestra, to answer Joe's question, if you have a tune, if you want to arrange a tune for the band, bring it in. Make sure that we have all the parts. Make sure that the score can be read by someone other than yourself, and and uh, and let's see what it sounds like. So no, I really encouraged them because we had two original, first time ever, two original. I think that's what Joe was talking about. Two original pieces in the orchestra this year, and it just went over so well. It went over very, very well, and you could just see the looks on their faces. And what I love in rehearsal, when something doesn't work and then they hear it, when they hear it on a computer, when they're at home hearing on the computer, oh, but now there's a real trumpet playing it, and there's a real saxophone player playing it. So I encourage them to write, and it's such an educational tool, and it
Uh,
gives them, it makes them focus a little bit more. We all
sure.
want that.
I'm
Yeah, thanks,
guessing.
Paul. I was really impressed with their presentation and their level of composition, their level of creativity. Really
Yeah,
good stuff.
yeah.
I think one of them was maybe a rising ninth or rising tenth. I mean, really young.
You're talking about yeah, he was an eighth grader. He was actually an eighth grader. He wrote a
Eighth grade.
tune.
Eighth grade.
Eighth grade.
Yeah.
The tenor player is sitting on the back row. Yeah, absolutely. Kalman, yeah, sitting on the back row, and he He brought it in. That what you probably heard was the final iteration. We had gone through several we had gone through several editions before we got to that point, because it was longer than that. But he had a lot to say, and that comment that I just made. But having the trumpets play it on the computer is a lot different than having the trumpets play it in real life, you know. So it's such great. So he had to go back and say, okay, well then maybe a trumpet player can't jump up between a high D and a high E above the staff, and at our level. So now you got to figure out another way to write it. So it's so cool, you know. But yeah, we had gone through a few versions of that tune, Hot Sauce. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
And then,
I'm going to keep this to an hour.
sure. Okay.
And
Sorry.
Joe, thanks for checking in.
Good to
We
see
have
you, Joe.
Joe lives a
same here, Paul.
parallel existence. But I wanted to ask you the final question, which I always ask, which is what is not working that you can't sort out, that you're dealing with. Maybe you wake up every once in a while thinking about it, whether it's in the educational side or in your own personal performances or presenting other artists. I'm always curious about what people are struggling with and see that they're trying to accomplish that hasn't been accomplished yet.
Oh, we need another hour for that. What is not
Well, I'm
working?
giving you 4 minutes.
Right. I would say, well, it's not so much that it's not working. It's just that the engagement on, I guess, I just don't have just don't have enough, time in the day, enough hands, enough bodies to do certain things that I'd want to
Mhm.
do. Like you said, having someone to run down a publicist, and I know a lot I know a lot of people that are in the business, you know what I'm and if, sometimes you talk to people, they'll just come out, and write a review. Or fundraising is always the issue. I'm not a fundraiser.
Right.
I would love to be. I would love to have those kind of chops, but then probably something else would fall by the wayside. So just having the resources to do certain things, so everything is not always a struggle. Everything is not
Mm.
always oh, is this going to work? Oh, this has to do this. It is. You know what I'm saying? I would love to have a what do you call that? A earmark, a line item. Okay, well, boom, choom, there's your lot of money. Now go run with it. I'd love to do that, but then it would, maybe it would be a different thing then. So I do like the app. I do like the challenge of having to put something together that people are gonna like. So if sometimes you get too much funding, you can just put in people you like, and you don't have to worry about selling tickets. And then so I do like the challenge of that.
I don't know who's in that situation.
There are some people. There are some people I can think of that's in a situation that have funding that they could do. A lot of things.
Well, I'm going to wrap it up, Paul. This has really been a wonderful opportunity. I will send a note to everybody that subscribed this evening. There was a total of about, I don't know, 40, 45 people. And this will be installed in the archive so people can revisit it um, in the future. So thanks very much, Paul. And
No,
I would
thanks
encourage
for having me. It's
everybody.
an honor.
What I heard Paul say was that with all of his activities, he's running around like a crazy person, like many people, like all of us. But he's looking for a board structure, an executive staff structure, and there are people that know how to do that. Um, so and it's not easy to put together and make it effectual, as we know.
Of
So
course.
thank you, Paul. God bless you. And
Thank you. God bless.
we never got around to discussing the whole problem of breakfast cereal, which Paul is a proponent of oatmeal, and if you want to honor Paul, you will have oatmeal for breakfast every day. Is it just
But just don't
breakfast?
say you don't like it. And just don't say you don't like it. That's all.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to wrap
Thank
it
you.
up. And thanks for coming. I should thank everybody individually: Linda Green, Mike Wolfson, Susan Rannick, Leslie Whipke, David's iPhone, and Linda, and then the Beanics, and Judith Corey, Barry, Rusty Hassan, Addie Stan, and Polly Rearson. And of course, our good friend. There she is, Leslie. She finally appeared. She exists. So,
Right.
and Joe Cunliffe. So thanks everybody, and hope to see all of you in some way or another very soon.
Thanks. Thanks.